Now, this Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority says assets held by its wealth fund almost doubled to 413.6 billion naira at the end of the third quarter of 2016. Uche Orji, the CEO of Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, joined us earlier to discuss activities of Nigeria's Sovereign Wealth Fund. Take a look.
A couple of things. The first thing was the injection of capital at the beginning of 2016, and then also the returns earned during the course of the year. So we've seen investment income go from 5 billion naira roughly to 54. And then we've also seen other impacts, such as the devaluation at another 90 billion. So yes. So that's been the factors that's driven the upside.
Well, it's really interesting hearing this, because 2016 wasn't a very good year. You know, talk about the fact that Nigeria got into a recession in that particular year. We'll talk about investor confidence. There were so many downsides, you know, to 2016.
Right. And
then hearing this, it actually comes as, what I call it, it's a pleasant surprise, though.
Well, it is, and to some extent, it's less about that. Less than 10% of our assets are invested domestically. So 90% plus is outside the country. So that, I think that's the first point I want to make. And we have investments diversified across many geographies. We're invested in about 17 different geographies. And the bulk of the performance has come from the Future Generations Fund, which holds 40% of our assets. And there we have 1/4 of those assets in public equities, 1/3 in developed market equities, so US equities, Japanese equities, Europe, as well as emerging markets, basket of emerging market equities. 1/4 is in private equity. And there we have a bunch of, they have a mix of what you describe as secondary interest in private equity and then primary private equity interest. And then we have hedge funds, global macro hedge funds, credit funds, long-short equity, those sort of strategies. And we have a few other things also called other diversifiers. So we have investments in leasing companies. We have investments in royalty, healthcare royalty companies. So all of that, you know, we had a good year with some of those investments in dollar terms. I take an example. I think one of the managers we use for developed market equities in the US was up 17% in dollar terms in the year. So not everything made money, but the bulk of the investments we made, we had about 38 different investments, of which 34 made money in 2016 for the Future Generations Fund. Yes.
Now, talking about investments, which other projects are you likely to bring in co-investors?
Right. So if you switch from the Future Generations Fund into the Infrastructure Fund, the Infrastructure Fund is very interesting. There are 3 pillars to our strategy. The first pillar is our direct investments. The second pillar is co-investment funds. And then the third is the creation of institutions that will help drive infrastructure investments. So direct investments, we have key sectors like agriculture, real estate, healthcare, power, motorways, of late midstream oil and gas, so everything from gas processing, pipelines, refining, those are an interesting areas. So we're making direct investments in those areas. Now, co-investment funds. Last year was we created 2 co-investment funds last year. In addition to one we had invested in 2014. The first one in 2014 was Fund for Agriculture Finance in Nigeria. That was along with KfW in Germany and the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. The co-investment fund last year was an agriculture co-investment fund with UFF Agri based in South Africa. These are farm investors. So we both contributed $25 million each, and we raised 150 from external parties. Then there's a real estate co-investment fund that also closed, was opened last year. That's still yet to be fully funded. So those are the 2 co-investment funds we implemented last year. This year, the focus will shift to creating what I describe as a middle market industrialization fund. And this will focus on the things needed to industrialize the economy. It's everything from basic chemicals, it's metal fabrication, it's float glass, it's all these kind of industries that I think are necessary for the industrialization of Nigeria. So we're going to create that fund. So that's what we're targeting on for this year. Now, switching to the institutions that help infrastructure investment in Nigeria. The NSIA is the biggest shareholder in the mortgage refinancing company. We helped start that business. The NSIA, this year, we launched alongside Garantco of the UK, a business called InfraCredit. InfraCredit will provide credit enhancement for bonds. So if you issue an infrastructure bond, and the InfraCredit will provide a monoline insurance that raises the rating of that bond, and thereby making it eligible for pension funds and insurance companies to buy into that. We're also helping start the Development Bank of Nigeria, and the NSIA is also helping midwife the Family Homes Funds, which is for social housing. So these are the three core pillars of the NSIA strategy for infrastructure. And so this year will be very interesting. You're going to see the NSIA shift more and more into domestic investments because we find a lot of compelling opportunities. But more importantly, we've done a lot of the groundwork necessary to grow in our domestic investments.
And talking about domestic investments, I'm very interested in your million metric ton fertilizer production program ongoing at the moment. I even hear you're also planning to employ the whistleblower strategy on that as well. Do you foresee some kind of abuse in that space coming up for you to employ? But let's talk us through that particular project in the first place and why we're going to be employing the whistleblower strategy. What has been the story?
Okay, here's the story. There's a question the president asked, which is why is it that farmers cannot get fertilizer, quality fertilizer on time and at a decent price? Why are the local blending plants moribund? What can we do? And he put together a team chaired by the governor of Jigawa State to go and explore this. And the president, also led the initiative to discuss with Morocco, the Kingdom of Morocco, during the state visit and his visit to Morocco, to say how can we solve this problem. And so a team was assembled, and the NSIA stepped up and said, look, we can help work through this. This is contract blending. So what we're doing is we're buying in the components, and we're paying the blending companies to blend to the mix that's needed in the country. It's open book strategy. We sit down and we go through what's your cost. We'll pay for the cost. We'll pay for the raw materials. We decide what is a reasonable margin, and you contract produce for us. Contract manufacturing is a very normal strategy. I mean, your iPhone is contract manufactured. Apple buys the components, designs the components, On High builds it for them, or Foxconn or whoever builds it for them, and then it gets to Best Buy and people go buy them. It's the same thing here. We need to only import 34% of the components needed in fertilizer. The remaining are local. Prior to now, we import the entire compound fertilizer with other people's labor. We have labor. Logistics, we have those, right? So all we needed to import was phosphate and potash. So we sat down, went through a process with a whole bunch of people and decided to accredit a handful of blending plants, signed blending contracts with them. We went through their costs and we agreed numbers that made sense. And the impact of this is we are able to deliver fertilizer 30% below market price without subsidy. And I think that is something that just speaks to the fact that we can switch and look inwards and spend more time and try to solve these problems. So this is the program. Now, so why is a whistleblower strategy on it? Obviously, it's a new program starting. First of all, at 1 million metric tons, I don't foresee much hoarding or abuse. But starting out, we want to be sure that people actually do not.
Yes, because there are those who've really argued in the past that the main challenge really isn't the production of fertilizer. It's actually the distribution of fertilizer to the farmers who really do need them.
No, of course.
So that and that is why I was going to find out. Do you foresee some kind of abuse when it comes to the distribution process? I mean, even when you tackle the production part of it.
Of course, it has a history of abuse, and we just want to make sure that people don't end up paying much more than we have as a recommended retail price, which is 5,500 naira for a 50-kilogram bag.
And it's going to be printed on the bag as well.
It is printed on the bag.
Uche Orji, CEO of the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority.